For nearly 2 decades, this man was the face of German foreign policy, Hans-Dietrich Genscher. In dealings with Moscow, his top priority was confidence building, and he wanted real partnership. Soviet diplomat Valentin Falin was a Kremlin advisor and ambassador to West Germany. We asked these two men to talk about German-Russian history as they experienced it. September 1955. Konrad Adenauer, who was Chancellor of West Germany, visited Moscow. Germany was a divided country, and there were still thousands of German prisoners of war in Soviet camps. To secure their return, Adenauer was ready to resume diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union. Valentin Falin was working in the foreign ministry in Moscow at the time.
We had a file on Adenauer. Everything was in it. What kind of person he was, what kind of politician, what his habits were, why he liked roses, and finally the recommendation to negotiate with him.
Adenauer's decision to go to Moscow and to resume diplomatic relations was the right one, but it was controversial at the time.
Controversial because Europe was divided in the grip of the Cold War. There were popular uprisings in communist East Germany, in Hungary, and later in Czechoslovakia, all of which were suppressed by the Soviets. It was only in 1969 that a new era began in West German relations with Eastern Europe under Chancellor Willy Brandt. It was under Brandt that Genscher first entered the German cabinet.
When pursuing foreign policy, you first have to pursue dialogue and cooperation, so as to change the status quo in such a way that the goals you consider important become achievable. You can only do that by working with your partners, not against them.
In August 1970, Willy Brandt went to Moscow. He wanted to foster a gradual thawing of relations between East and West. That meant officially recognizing the division of Germany and the East German state. A number of treaties were signed during this time, including agreements with Moscow. Valentin Falin was one of the people who collaborated on those treaties.
If it hadn't been for the Moscow Treaty, there would not have been a de-escalation between East and West, and the rise of Gorbachev would not have been possible.
When Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in 1985, he was keen to reform the Soviet Union. Back in Germany, Helmut Kohl was now Chancellor, and Genscher still Foreign Minister. They saw a partner in Gorbachev.
After meeting with Gorbachev, I told my colleague, Gerold von Braunmühlen, that if Gorbachev implemented everything he had told us, we would have a real chance for the first time of achieving German reunification within the foreseeable future.
In September 1989, in the Czech capital Prague, thousands of East German citizens gathered at the West German embassy, hoping to be allowed to travel to the West. As Genscher began to tell them they will indeed be permitted to go to West Germany, his speech was drowned by cheers.
Obviously, it was very emotional, for me too. I could understand the people standing there in the embassy garden. I myself had left East Germany at the age of 25. The circumstances were different, but my motives were the same. It's not something you forget.
Less than 2 months later, the Berlin Wall fell and the East German communist regime collapsed. Germans on both sides of the border were hungry for reunification. In July 1990, Helmut Kohl and Genscher met with Gorbachev at a country residence in the Caucasus. It was at this meeting that Gorbachev finally agreed to German reunification. Within less than a year, the Soviet Union itself had collapsed. Germany and Russia had to redefine their relations. A new generation of leaders had come on the scene. In 2000, Vladimir Putin won the presidential election in Russia. The new strong man in the Kremlin was seen as a beacon of stability, presiding over a more self-confident and economically prosperous Russia. He enjoyed good relations with Germany's Chancellor Gerhard Schröder. While others criticized Putin as authoritarian, Schröder called him a flawless democrat. Schröder's successor Angela Merkel has been cooler in her relations with Putin and the new president Dmitry Medvedev. But Merkel too understands the importance of partnership with Russia.
Russians and Germans have always benefited from good mutual relations, and conflicts have always been harmful to both sides.
We live on the same continent. Russia is a European country. We can do a lot for each other, and together we can achieve a lot.
And on that, both men are agreed. Hans-Dietrich Genscher, the former German foreign minister, and the former Soviet diplomat Valentin Falin. Two men who helped write history in the 20th century.